Hey everybody, and welcome back for another deep dive. This time, we are going straight into the music scene. You ready for this one?
Always.
All right. So we got this request from one of our listeners about Scott Storch, the producer.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the name definitely rings a bell.
Right. So they send in this YouTube video about him, and it's got the whole classic, like, rags to riches to, well, you know how the story usually goes. But our listener wanted to go a little deeper with it, and I gotta say, I kind of do too.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you see the highlights and you think you've got it figured out,
Yeah.
but there's always more to it, right?
Exactly. Like, this video hits you with this crazy list of hits. Like,
Right.
we're talking Beyonce, we're talking Dr. Dre, everybody in between. But it was Storch's ability to jump between genres that really got me thinking. Like, how does one person create bangers for artists that are that different? What is the secret sauce?
Right, right. It's tempting to just say talent and call it a day, but there's always more to it than that. And I think that's what makes this a really interesting deep dive, is trying to pull back the curtain on how all of those elements, the talent, the environment, and maybe even a little bit of luck, all come together.
Okay, so let's unpack it a little. The video kind of skims over his early years. He was a self-taught pianist from Philly, drawn to music, which, fair enough. But his family, get this, was pushing him towards court reporting.
Wow.
Right.
Wild. Talk about an alternate reality.
I know. Can you even imagine?
But, it is interesting that you bring that up, because it wasn't just like this innate ability that shaped him, right? It was the environment. He comes up in Philly, the Philly soul scene. That energy, like, it seeps into the music.
Totally. And speaking of Philly, can't forget the roots.
Of course not.
And the video mentions this offhand comment about Storch, where somebody described him as, and I quote, black soul in a white man's body. And look, we could unpack that statement for hours.
Oh, absolutely hours.
But it speaks to something really interesting about the unspoken expectations around race and genre. You know what I mean? Like those preconceived notions that we have about what a, quote, white musician should sound like, or what a, quote, black musician should sound like, and how Storch's career, in a way, kind of threw those out the window.
Yeah, completely subverted it.
For sure. And then, on top of it, there's that story about the piano teacher telling him he was unteachable.
Oof.
Talk about a little bit of motivation, right?
Yeah, but also, you know what that says?
Yeah.
That says, I'm going to do it my way.
Exactly. He wasn't afraid to hear things his own way, to sort of like break the rules a little bit.
And that's crucial for any artist, right? Like that willingness to experiment, to find your own voice even when it's different, that's what leads to something unique and memorable,
Totally. And memorable is a good word for it, because Storch definitely developed his sound. And that brings us to, dare I say, the Midas touch years. So buckle up, folks, because we are about to dissect how Scott Storch became the go-to hitmaker for a solid decade. Okay, so we're not just here to like list off hits like it's a Wikipedia page, right? We want to know what made Scott Storch the producer to work with at that time. And it sounds like it all kind of starts with, you guessed it, Dr. Dre.
Well, you know how it is in the music industry, right? It's all about those connections, those pivotal moments.
For sure.
And the video does mention Eve, makes that connection, brings them together. But I think what's really important to note is that Dre, he wasn't just looking for somebody to play the notes on the page.
Oh, no. He was looking for a sound.
He wanted something to, like, shake things up, something fresh.
Totally. And boy, did they ever find it.
Yeah.
I love that anecdote in the video about the making of Still, DRE. So Storch comes up with this, like, iconic piano riff.
Iconic.
And Dre wasn't even there.
I know, right? But see, that's what's remarkable, is that beat. It just like, it embodies Storch's signature. Like you hear the soulful piano melody, which, shout out to those Philly roots, but it's layered over this hard-hitting, West Coast energy.
Yeah.
And that fusion is what makes it so captivating.
And to think Jay-Z wrote the lyrics for that?
Right.
Like, imagine being that good, where
Yeah.
Jay-Z's like, yeah, I want in on this.
Absolutely.
It's pretty amazing.
It speaks to Storch's talent, but I think it also speaks to this incredible moment in hip-hop where you have these, like, titans of the industry all coming together.
Yes.
And they're pushing each other creatively.
It's amazing. Okay, so this next part I like to call this the Storch sound files. So I'm going to throw out some details that really jumped out at me in this video. And you, my friend, are going to break it down for us. You're the music journalist, okay?
I like it. Let's do it.
Okay, sound file number 1, Justin Timberlake, Cry Me a River. Now, apparently there is a whole credit dispute on this one between Storch and Timbaland. A little juicy.
Oh, absolutely. Right. Like, again, it's like this messy, sometimes dramatic, the reality behind the music. And that song, I mean, it was a massive hit, but the story behind it, I think it reminds us that even in these collaborative, creative spaces, things can get a little, ego, ownership, it can get tangled. It's just a good reminder that there are often layers to these creative endeavors that we as listeners don't always see.
Exactly. Okay, file number 2. Fat Joe being initially scared of the lean back beat.
I love that.
Scared of that absolute banger.
I know. But isn't that interesting? And I think this goes even beyond just Storch. I think it speaks to the courage that it takes for any artist to really embrace a new sound, even when it's brilliant. That initial hesitation, that fear, is actually, I think, a testament to how groundbreaking that beat was.
Totally, yeah.
It was a risk.
Yeah.
And thankfully, they took it.
They did. Thankfully, they did. Okay, last file. Here we go. Beyonce's Baby Boy. Now, the video really highlighted how much she loved working with Storch.
Yeah. And you think about the timing of that, right? This is Beyonce's breakout solo album. She's defining her sound apart from Destiny's Child. And I think Storch's production on that song, it really provides this amazing soundscape for her to explore her own artistry, to really step into this new chapter. So it makes sense that she loved working with him.
Totally.
Yeah.
It makes perfect sense. You've painted quite a picture of his range, though, from hip-hop to pop, everything in between. So put yourself in the shoes of an artist, right? Back then, you're walking into the studio, you're about to work with Scott Storch at the height of his powers. What kind of sound are you hoping he cooks up for you?
That's a great question. I mean, I think if I'm like a 50 Cent, I'm coming, I want that raw, hard-hitting energy that he's known for. But, if I'm, say, Christina Aguilera, I'm looking for that pop sensibility, but with an edge.
Yes.
And I think that's what made him so sought after, that versatility. He could tap into the artist's vision and elevate it.
Oh, totally. He was at the top of the world. But you know what they say? What goes up?
Must come down.
Unfortunately. And in Storch's case, a very public fall from grace. But that's what makes this story so captivating, because it is kind of that cautionary tale. Like, it's a stark reminder that, success, it can be fleeting, and that maybe true fulfillment comes from somewhere else entirely. What do you think?
Oh, I think that's a great point. It's like this reality check for all of us. Sometimes the things that we're chasing, they don't always bring this satisfaction that we crave.
It's easy to get caught up in the second half of that video,
Yeah.
The lavish spending, the legal issues. It's almost like a cautionary tale we've heard a million times.
Yeah, I think it's more nuanced than that. There's that line in the video, someone close to Storch, saying how he was, quote, spending to feel something, anything. I mean, that really stuck with me, because it wasn't just about the material stuff, It speaks to this deeper need.
Yeah, like he was trying to fill some kind of void, and the success couldn't quite reach it.
Exactly. The external validation awards, the money, the fame, it's seductive, but it doesn't automatically equal fulfillment. Inner peace, that is.
Totally. And it's interesting because musically, this is also when we see Storch kind of moving away from those hip-hop roots, experimenting with more pop-heavy sounds.
Yeah.
The video kind of frames it as this downfall, but I don't know, was it really? What do you think?
It's so easy to connect the dots looking back, right? To see it as a decline.
Yeah.
But what if it was just an artist evolving, exploring different sounds? The music industry loves to put people in boxes, but true creativity, it often means breaking free from those constraints.
That's a good point. And I mean, honestly, the pressure that Storch must have been under during those years, the video touches on the Paris Hilton era. He was constantly in that spotlight, hounded by paparazzi. That can't be easy to deal with on top of everything else.
Oh, absolutely not. Fame's a double-edged sword, man. That level of scrutiny, that lack of privacy, it makes it tough to even hold on to a sense of self.
For sure.
To stay connected to the music that brought you this success in the first place.
Exactly. And it makes you think about what we as listeners sometimes expect from artists, right? We want the hits, but we kind of forget there's a human being behind the music dealing with all these pressures that we don't see.
100%. We see the highlight reel, not the behind the scenes.
So where does that leave Storch now? It seems like he's taken a step back from the limelight.
He has. And I think that says a lot about his resilience, The video shows he's never lost that spark, that love for making music. And I think that's really important. He's found his way back to genuine connections. The artists like Fat Joe, Mario, they stuck by him.
That's got to count for something.
Oh, it does. It speaks volumes. It shows the importance of real relationships, right? The people who ground you, those bonds, they give you a sense of belonging, strength. even when the whole industry, the whole world feels chaotic.
So, as we kind of wrap up this deep dive on Scott Storch, what have we learned?
I think we've seen how talent alone, it's not enough.
Right.
It needs that nurturing, that unique voice, the courage to keep evolving no matter what. We've seen how tricky success can be, how that external validation, it fades, and how true fulfillment, it often comes from within, from those real connections we make along the way.
And maybe most importantly, to look beyond those headlines, right? To see the human stories behind the music that we love.
Yeah, because there's always more to the story, isn't there?
Always. And sometimes digging deeper, it reveals not just the inner workings of the music industry, but, the resilience of the human spirit.
You got that right.
And on that note, we'll leave you with this. Go check out Storch's music, listen with fresh ears, see what you discover. That's it for this deep dive, everybody. Until next time.